It's interesting. When Jesus talked about blindness, he talked about two things, physical blindness and spiritual blindness. And he did relate one with the other. If you go to John 9 verse 1 to 25, you read the story of the healing of the man that was born blind. And I love the story, and I love the quote near the end of it, so I'm going to kind of read the whole thing. As he passed by, this is Jesus, he saw a blind man from birth. And his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind?" This was the assumption. People deserved the fate they had. And Jesus answered, "It was neither that this man sinned nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me as long as it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground. Love this. Can you imagine going to the doctors and this is what they do, right? You've gone to the doctors with that whole blindness thing, and they just say, "Hang on a minute, let's just go in the garden." He spat on the ground and made basically a clay mud thing of the spittle, which is the way the NASB puts it, which is fantastic, and applied the clay to his eyes. Right, so you've got a blind guy come along, and you go, "Hang on a minute." All the nurses love this bit because they hate sputum. And you get it out like this, right, and hygiene goes out the window. Can you imagine what people would say? I just love it. Jesus got guts. So anyway, he applied the clay to his eyes and said, "Go and wash in the pool of Siloam." So it's like, yeah, he just shoved this stuff all over my face. I'll wash anywhere. And so, so he went away and washed and came back seeing. And therefore the neighbors, and those who previously saw him as a beggar, were saying, "Is this not the one who used to sit and beg?" And others were saying, "This is him." And still others were saying, "No, but it looks like him." And he kept saying, "I am the one." So you can imagine this whole circle of people. "Is he the one that was blind?" "Yes, he's the one." "No, but it looks like him." "I'm the one." It's this whole little kind of circle of people. I have visual images, forgive me. And so they were saying, "How then were his eyes opened?" The complete disbelief, complete and utter disbelief. "The man who is called Jesus made the clay and anointed my eyes." That's it, anointed. So when next you come and you're on special mission, and you come to the front and we bring all the elders around to anoint you, we will pass the bowl in front of the elders. Now, I love the way he puts it. He anointed me. Well, obviously he couldn't see what he did, could he? He anointed me and said to me, "Go to Siloam and wash." So I went away and I washed and I received sight. It's kind of simple, really. They said to him, "Where is he?" And he said, "I don't know." And they brought the Pharisees, the man who was formerly blind. Now it was the Sabbath on that day when Jesus had made the clay and opened his eyes. And when the Pharisees also were asking him again how he received his sight, and he said to them, "He applied the clay to my eyes, I washed and I see." Therefore some of the Pharisees were saying, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." He heals on the Sabbath. How dare he? But others were saying, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you say about him, since he opened your eyes?" And he said, "He's a prophet." Then the Jews did not believe it of him, that he had been blind and had received sight, until they called the parents of the very one who had received his sight and questioned them, saying, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? Then how does he now see?" His parents answered them and said, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But how now he sees, we do not know, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself." His parents then said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone confessed him to be the Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. For this reason, his parents said, "He's of age. Ask him." Come on, let's pass the buck. So on the second time, they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God." Leading question. "We know that this man is a sinner." Then he answered, "Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see." It's a brilliant statement. And it's interesting for a couple of reasons. Because you heard the Amazing Grace song. And you heard John Newton say in the song, "I once was blind, but now I see." Now, John Newton was blind to the fact that these people were people, that these slaves that he was transporting were human beings that deserved the dignity and respect that he deserved in the eyes of God because of the value God places on each and every one of us. He did not see the humanity in these individuals. I have a question. Are there areas in your life where you are failing to see the humanity in individuals? Are there areas in life where you're blind? And maybe I can raise a few eyebrows. What about young mums that young girls that get pregnant and it's completely outside of marriage and everything else? Are they so terrible that they deserve to be castigated and told to leave the church? Or should they be welcomed with open arms because they are blind and need somebody to lead them? Is it that we should tell them to be quiet and sit down and not make a scene and try and stay out of the way because we don't want people to see the likes of you, the cursed ones that have done sin? We would prefer you to be quiet and out of the way of the church and out of the eyes of the church. You can come, but please sit at the back where nobody can see you. Or should we see them and their humanity and who they are? How about the homeless that are coming in? Does it upset and offend some of you that they come in and they might be drunk? They are sinning in the house of God. Does it offend you that some of these young people will make mistakes in their lives? Is it my failure? Is it your failure? Or is it their failure and they are doing things which they should not do and we should stamp on them? Does it offend you that sometimes young people are held up as having said some things or done some things and they should be never on that thing, they should never do that thing again, they should not be allowed to be involved with those worship teams or that teaching or that group again? Is it that that's what should we do? Or are we blind to their humanity and are we blind to the fact that they may still be blind? See, would you say to blind Bartimaeus, "Sit down, shut up, stay out of the eyes of the group. Jesus is far too significant and too important, and as he passes by, you have to be quiet and sit there. You are a sinner. You deserve to be in the junk pile that you have created for yourself. You deserve to stay there." Or should we listen to the cries of the blind? Should we see ourselves? Should we be the ones that need our eyes opening rather than them first? Because otherwise we are the blind leading the blind. We need our eyes open first. And so this is what Jesus is saying. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to be critical of anybody, but this is very real. And there are very real circumstances, even within our own denomination, our own town, our own church sometimes, where maybe a bit of sight would change the way we treat one another. And I mean that across the board. Young people, sometimes the older generation need you to see them for who they are. People of experience, people that have carried integrity for 40 years, people that have been married and managed to sustain a healthy relationship, people that have given and given and given to a church for years and years and years and years, and leaving the toilets filthy or leaving rubbish all over the ground tells them what you think of them and all the time they've given to the church. Looking after the place is important. And that's not to beat you up. It's just to remind you and open your eyes so that you don't have the clouded vision of selfishness or fear or concern or self-importance or bitterness or hatred or any of these things that get in the way of our vision. I was doing a lesson in school, and I've mentioned this from the platform probably a couple of times, but I'll remind you. And I was doing it on the sanctity of life in the process of teaching on abortion and euthanasia. And the talk on abortion and euthanasia is everything to do with how we perceive the person. Everything to do with it. Whether you perceive them as precious or not. Whether you perceive them as a human being or not. That's the abortion debate. We got to the end of the 4 sessions, and I was talking, and we were talking about the sanctity of life. And I broke into a part of how does God see you? And I started to speak over these kids, and I started to say to them, do you know that God loves you? That God values you equally and hugely significant. You are a child to him. You are precious to him. He loves you no matter how good you are or however bad you have been. He loves you no matter what you look like, who you have pleased or who you haven't pleased. He loves you, he loves you, he loves you, he loves you. And I thought, because of his love, the value that he places on you and your life is supremely significant and never can be taken away from you, no matter what you have done in life, no matter how terrible you have been, or no matter how good you have been. It is supreme, and it is over you. And you could feel the presence of God come into the RE class lesson. So much so that one of the young people that I knew that was in the back was inundated with questions afterwards, and probably for a good few days afterwards, about what on earth went in that room, because everybody in the room knew it was happening. The presence of God came down. They were looking around, completely freaked out. Didn't know what it was. I'm not in a position to start kind of giving an appeal, but God was moving in that place because their eyes were opening to see how God saw them. This is how God heals some of you. Some of you feel insignificant. Some of you feel like you aren't good enough. Some of you feel so depressed and so down about who you are and what you haven't got and how terrible everything is around you and your family and situation. You feel like you haven't done enough, you're not good enough, you haven't made the right standards, you haven't done the right stuff, and you feel terrible about yourself. And your healing will come as you begin to see yourself through God's eyes, not through yours. Your healing will come as your vision is restored by what he sees, not by what you see. Your vision is clouded because you look at yourself through the wrong filter. You are processing something which you should not be processing because you're seeing yourself incorrectly. I don't care whether you feel like you're good enough or not, ultimately, because you are good enough in the eyes of God. Because Christ was good enough. It doesn't matter how you are judging yourself functionally or structurally. It doesn't matter how you are judging yourself into how good you do things or how badly you do things, or your physical body and how bad you have done things to yourself, or how badly you look or otherwise. None of that matters to God. His care and concern is not over the judgments you have made over your life, however incorrect they be. His care and concern is whether you realize that his judgment over your life is supreme, and he tells you of your significance, your beauty, your greatness that you have in his eyes. You are his chosen child of God that he dies for, that he pours his love out on, and he doesn't want to ever let you go. That's God. That's through his eyes. Clouded view, his view. Blindness, you can see. God heals blind eyes and causes you to see. And that's one of the things that giving you vision does for you.